To understand the world of autism and Asperger's syndrome, it makes sense to listen to people with autism and Asperger's syndrome. So therefore, to understand the world of a neurotypical, surely it makes sense to listen to somebody who is a neurotypical. The idea behind these videos is to give people with autism and Asperger's syndrome a very honest view of what it is like to be a neurotypical, and to guide you through some of the basic concepts that us neurotypical people take for granted. Today I want to talk to you about the concept of lying. Now, most neurotypical people will spend 96% of their lives lying, and there are various reasons why we do this. Somebody once said that autistic people grow up to become autistic adults, whereas neurotypical people, we learn certain concepts as a child, and then in adolescence we learn that those concepts actually aren't true, and one of those is lying. Mum and dad teach as a child that honesty is the best policy, but as an adult what we learn is lie through your teeth. One of the reasons why we might lie is to encourage and nurture. Say for instance a young child shows us a picture. It might look something like this. Now in our heads we're thinking that it's an atrocious work of art, it's not very good, it's not in the right colours, the size isn't correct. But the words that come out of our mouth to that child is, it's absolutely beautiful. And we do our best to sound as though we mean it. This way it raises the individual's self-esteem, and we might even encourage them to draw more pictures. Now, this is also true if somebody older shows you a piece of art. Again, it could be somebody 16, 17, and again, it might not be very good. But again, what we do is we tell the individual that it's a very nice piece of work, and we might subtly say something like, oh yes, yeah, keep practicing. But at no time do you actually tell them the truth that it's rubbish. Because what that does in itself is it hurts their feelings and lowers their self-esteem, and they might never show you anything again. This could be true if you take your child to a soccer match or a football match and they're absolutely useless. The idea behind this is to encourage them to have fun. What you don't tell them is actually perhaps they best take up another sport. Again, what you're looking at here is to save that other person's feelings. It's to make them feel better. Eventually, that individual will work out themselves that perhaps they're not very good, and they'll stop of their own accord. Which brings us on the next reason to why people lie, and that can be to save people's feelings. So men often get asked the dreaded question, does my bum look big in this? And even neurotypical men struggle with this, but the actual answer is straight away, no it doesn't, you look absolutely wonderful. If your partner came out wearing a Hessian sack, you would still tell them they look wonderful, even when they look absolutely hideous. A friend of mine who has Asperger's syndrome told me the other week when his partner got up without any makeup, he told her she looked ugly. Now, she understands he's got Asperger's syndrome, so accepted it. In a neurotypical relationship with a partner that's not understanding, under no circumstances, even if you believe for that moment that your partner looks ugly, do you ever tell them. Even when neurotypical people say to you, please tell me the truth, most of the time we don't. We don't point out the obvious either. So if you were at work and you have a colleague who smells, we would never tell that individual that they smell. Again, that's for saving their feelings. You could subtly give them a hint or leave a can of deodorant on their desk, but we would never tell them they smell. Another reason why we lie is to retain the status quo, or to keep the balance. And this is a difficult one because obviously you will have opinions, but there will be times when it's important you don't view your opinions. An example for this would be, let's say you're out for a meal and people genuinely ask you, how was the food? And again, if the food's really bad, most neurotypical people will say something like, it's fine. They will tend not to tell you that it's absolutely awful. The reason for this is it's about retaining the mood within the crowd. What we definitely don't do is make a scene. So you have a right to complain about the food, but if you have to do it a specific way. So a bad example would be if you were to go call the waiter over and very sure of yourself and saying, I'm not eating that rubbish. That will actually make the whole group feel uncomfortable. So again, you could be telling the truth, but the group won't appreciate you being so blunt with the waiter. It's probably more polite to say that the food is not quite right. Would there be any chance that they could correct that for you? And that way it eases the group, and they're more likely to then have a good evening. The flip side is if you make the group uncomfortable, they're less likely to ask you out again. It can also get difficult with regards to things like celebrities or politics, or you could have your own religious beliefs. They're very difficult subjects, and to tell the truth about certain things, you have to be very, very careful with the people that you're with. So for instance, a lot of my friends with Asperger's syndrome are atheists, and they quite openly want to tell people that are religious what they actually think of that individual's faith. Under no circumstances should you engage in that conversation. The best way to describe this is it's about mutual respect, and respect that they have a difference of opinion to you. In your mind they might be wrong, but you don't tell them they're wrong. This can also be true of general subjects such as media and pop culture or celebrity. Let's say for instance a famous celebrity dies and somebody says to you, oh, isn't it awful that so and so has died? The best thing to do in that situation is to go along with that individual's belief. So you would say something like, oh yes, isn't it awful? What you don't do is say, actually no, that celebrity was a total waste of space, they were a drug user, they threw away their talent. Again, what that does is it turns people off from you. In your head you're telling the truth, but again, neurotypical people don't want to hear that. So generally let people lead you in a conversation. So if they say, oh, Whitney Houston died, isn't it a tragedy? Your reply would be, yes, it is awful, even if you don't think that. And that way you fit in. It could also be true of other subjects. An example recently was the Olympics, when everyone in the United Kingdom was getting very excited. And so the right answer is when they said, oh, did you watch the Olympics? Now, if you didn't, you would just answer, no, I didn't watch it. What happened? And then they'll tell you. What you don't say to them is how you feel. So you could say, no, it was a total waste of public money. When the world's in debt, the last thing we need is games. Again, people don't want to hear that. People actually often give you, if you listen truly to what people say to you, they will often give you hints as to the answers that they want. So with regards to the celebrity, that they might say, oh, isn't it awful about so and so dying? So you know that your reply has to be very similar. You have to mirror what that person says. So if they say, the Olympic Games, I'm so excited, the correct answer is to say, yes, isn't it wonderful? So you tend to go with what that individual wants, and then the individual then is more likely to talk to you. Another reason why people lie is to get themselves out of trouble or out of a difficult situation. So if you were to copy somebody's homework and you got caught, denial is the best defense. Just deny. Even if they prove that you've done it, still deny. If you do decide to lie, it's important to keep the story as near to the truth as possible. That way, individuals are more likely to believe what you've just said. Say, for instance, let's say you were married and you were seeing somebody else the night before. What you would do is you might, for instance, say that you were with your best friend. Now, if you spend a lot of time with that best friend, that story in itself is quite plausible. But if you said, for instance, that you went to a bar by yourself and you never done that in your life, then that's a hole in the story, and that would lead the neurotypical person to then question you further. And the more questions that they ask, that's when what they're trying to do is they're trying to find a hole within your story. So it's trying to make, when you do lie, it's trying to make this situation as what neurotypical people call as watertight as possible. You know, so there aren't any loose ends. So you with Gary, so before you tell your partner that you saw Gary, you might concoct the story with Gary so he covers for you. If there are any holes in the story, then it's easier to be uncovered. Which brings us on to the final point, which is you have to look at the big picture when you lie. And this can be quite difficult. An example would be my son, when he was in secondary school, caught somebody smoking in the toilets. Now, the right thing to do is to actually go and tell the teacher. And that was exactly what he did. Now, my son couldn't see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture was that because he grasped on this young man could have in fact retaliated, and for the next 4 or 5 years of his senior school, he could have been bullied by this other lad. So sometimes when you decide to tell the truth, you have to see what the bigger picture is, and it's weighing up the pros and cons. Anyway, this is just a brief insight into what it's like to lie and why neurotypical people lie. I hope this has been of some help for you, and if there's any subjects that you'd like me to cover, then please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.